It's football season, and there's no more exciting time for a football fan than this coming to this football season and be mid-term and having your teams do well and just having lots of fun watching the games being played with some very exciting talent out there at all levels of football. Well, we're going to go off of some requests that I've had from you all to tell about my story and my football journey getting to the point where I am. It's not high stakes in NFL and Division One, but it's my story, and I'm going to share it with you in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darin Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darin Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pigpen, your portal to positive football history. And as I said at the intro, you, our fans, have reached out to me and wanted to know a little bit more about my background and how I got to the point where I'm talking about football with you almost every day via this podcast or the YouTube channel, or sending out some of our YouTube shorts and our many articles that we have on Pigskin Dispatch. Every day there's one or two new ones coming out for you. And we're always excited to do that, and still excited about football just as much as we were about 4 or 5 years ago when we started this project of Pigskin Dispatch. So let's go back to the roots of me being a football fan. I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, Erie. Actually, Edinboro is where my family is originally from, which is about 15 miles south of Erie. And my grandfather was, a hardworking man, grew up in, the hard times, lived through the Great Depression and everything, but he worked in a factory and was around football a little bit, but not really, super into it. My father, on the other hand, ended up doing some military service in Okinawa with the Air Force, and loved football at the high school age. Wasn't very good as a player, but was around the team, managing, equipment managing, things like that, helping out the coaches wherever he could and the players. And he brought me that love for football because as a young age, take me to every Friday night high school game at our local high schools. Buy me football cards, the magazines, everything that was going on in the 1970s. And of course, our team that we liked was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And my dad has an interesting story because everybody around when he grew up was a Cleveland Browns fan, because the Browns were definitely more dominant than the Steelers in the 50s and 60s. And he decided to sort of buck that trend and wanted to just go for the guys that weren't winning so much. And that was the Pittsburgh Steelers, the lovable losers, as he says. And so he did that, and that's what came his love of the black and gold. And of course, when they're winning, that's when I came into the picture. I grew up, in the 70s, and everything was hunky dory there. I was spoiled rotten like every other Pittsburgh Steelers fan at the time, and the Pirates too. They were very good in the 70s. So I didn't know anything but a winning tradition. And that made me love football even more. And our local college, where I ended up going, Edinboro University, had some great football programs, some great teams and players that moved on from their Division II level up into, played some professional football, CFL, a little bit of NFL, and some others that we got to enjoy along the way with some great athletes. But one thing that really my dad provided to me is he gave me a book of statistics, NFL statistics of 1978 stats, and going back all the way in the history of football. And I just absorbed all 400 or 500 pages, whatever this was, in this paperback book, and just wore the cover out. And really enjoyed that. It was definitely a big part of it. And, the football cards, just reading the backs and seeing the players and watching them on TV and the interviews, and, just waiting for Sunday morning to come. 'Cause that's really the only time you really got any part of any football news, was those pregame shows that came on. We didn't have the ESPNs and everything early on when I watched football, but those pregames, I just soaked everything up that they had to say, watching the games, watching a little bit of the post game, and then football was done. Then you have to wait for Monday night. But that's how I really got involved with loving the game of football. I played a little bit in grade school. When I went to high school, I went to a high school that had a tremendous football program in history, and I was very thin and small. and I did felt that I would not get the playing time or probably get killed, and I probably would playing football. So I ended up playing soccer, which I was a little bit better athlete and suited for that. So I played soccer for high school for my first couple years in high school, and then started working and dating and things like that. And sports sort of got pushed out for my second and my last 2 years of high school. College, I went and run the same route. I was working and things like that, and worked my way through college. And as I was in college, I needed to get some extra money, and a neighbor uh, recommended, "Hey, why don't you come on Friday nights and Saturdays and hold the chains at local football games? We'll give you a couple bucks and some pizza money and whatever else you want to do with it." And I said, "Okay, I'll try that out." Well, I started getting around these officials and being in the locker rooms and hearing them talk football. I'm like, wow, this is really kind of cool. They talked me into that year going into working some lower level games, some kids games and officiating. I started buying the uniforms and started drinking the Kool-Aid. And by the end of that season, I took the test for Pennsylvania to be a high school level uh, official, and I passed it. And then 27 years later, I was going in and working a state championship game and working some big games as the white hat, the referee of a crew for the last 10 years that I officiated. So I made some great networked friends, both on the officiating side and the coaches. You deal with the coaches all the time, and some of them I grew up with or played softball with, or whatever, went to school with them one time. Or some of you just meet on the sidelines and you have instant connections, and you have a friendship and a respect, I guess is maybe a better word for it. And still to this day, I see former coaches and they see me and we wave to each other, say hi. Some of them are my neighbors, live in my neighborhood as my wife and I take walks, and we really just enjoy that camaraderie. But we have that bond of football. It's a brotherhood, whether you're wearing stripes, whether you're wearing a coach's headset or you're putting a helmet on. It's a brotherhood, and it's really important. It's just that network of tight guys and gals now that are doing the officiating. You don't understand it till you take that field and do it. And the fans, just love it. But when you're an official, you really have to have some thick skin, because there's only 4 or 5 other people on that whole field that are gonna like you before the game, during the game, and after the game. And that's the other people that are dressed like you, wearing the pajamas, the black and white striped pajamas out on the field. Everybody else is going to either just tolerate you or loathe you by the time the game's over. No matter what you do, if could officiate the best game of your life, and somebody's going to be upset because, of course, they want their team to win. They're fans, fandom. It's short for fanatics. They're fanatical about their team, and it's human nature to do that. You want to support and have that nostalgic connection to a team, and you got to respect that. And when you see officials and coaches going at it and arguing, you got to remember, as an official, and I've told this to many people that I officiated with, the coaches, that's their livelihood. Whether you're a high school or a college coach or an NFL coach, that is how you put bread on the table for your family, is by being a football coach. They're probably, many of them are fine teachers, but they're probably at that school because of their football knowledge and their way of coaching football, and they get the English teacher job or social studies teacher job. Not in all cases, but it happens quite a bit, more than you know. And so they are at that school and in their job because they can coach football. Where officials, it's a part-time recreational activity in most respects. You don't get paid very much for doing it. You take a lot of baloney from people and disrespect. So you really got to have that thick skin. But you got to understand, the coaches, they're involved, they're heated, it's their livelihood, and that's what you're going to do. But that's part of the fun of officiating and being on the field. And the players, just to get to see and experience and see the pain and the happiness and all the emotions that go into a football game. And you can see how hard these kids work at playing the game that they love. And that's why I love the high school level. It's so pure because they're playing it for pure love of the game. There's no money involved or anything like that. Maybe they get a college scholarship to a D1 or D2 because they are a good player. But for most part, most of these kids are not going to play beyond the high school level, and they're doing it for the pure love of the game. And they work hard all summer and all in the off season now, lifting weights, running, conditioning, practicing 2 a days, going to camp, and just the rigors of football, beating up on their body and beating up on their teammates and friends as you go along, but just for the love of the game, and it's definitely something special. Now, the safety aspects of the game, I like where technology is going. I think I don't know that the gladiator caps are the answers to all the head injuries. It's a shame you see these great athletes and large and small. Some are having some very serious matters. Brett Favre just coming out and saying he's got Parkinson's. It could be an effect of CT. We don't know. I don't think scientists have figured that all out, but I'm sure it's got some connection to it. I see where Tommy Kramer just went on social media after Favre answered and said that he's in the early stages of dementia. You're seeing these folks that are our heroes and playing at the top levels of their games, who took a lot of hits. A quarterback gets hit. They take a lot of beating. Running backs get hit. Earl Campbell, you see him now. The man's in a wheelchair. There's a guy that seems like he could float on clouds and run through brick walls when he was a player, but it takes wear and tear on your body. And these players are sacrificing their body for love of the game, making, great money at the NFL level, but some of them don't make the NFL. They're making, average money in the CFL and UFL and things like that. They're playing because the love of the game and to make a couple bucks to it, but they're sacrificing some of the things to their body. So anything safety related, like the gladiator caps and some of the helmet technologies that are coming out, you see all kinds of uh, strange air holes and vent holes and relief cutouts in the helmets that are coming out these days. And the padding and the technology inside of them is, so advanced over what it was 20, 30 years ago. And, going back to the 70s, even it's like night and day what they're doing. So that's all part of loving football. It's a strategy game. It's a game within a game. Each player taking on a single opponent in front of them and making sure they win their personal battle and doing it for the overall team battle of offense or defense. And then ultimately your team, your three units of your team defeating the opponent that you're playing against that day. I mean, it's just such a wonderful strategy and so many different formations that can come out of those simple rules of having seven people on the line with two terminal ends and somebody receiving a snap and everything you can do out of it and the complicated systems and schematics that the offenses do, and then they're countered by the defensive tactics that are just phenomenal. It just blows your mind if you think about all the possibilities. And these coaches and coordinators have like computers in their brains trying to figure out, hey, this guy's doing this, I got to counter with this and change this up. It's just some the halftime adjustments and everything. That's just the love of the game, and that's what was really attractive to it. So I did that for 27 years. I officiated and enjoyed on the field in the game. And I had such an appreciation. It was time for me to stop doing that, spend more time with my family. I didn't get to see them for Friday nights for 4 months of the year and gone almost every night when you're officiating. And I got more into the history of the game. I had wrote some historic um, articles for some publications online when I was officiating from an officiating standpoint, a history of rules and things like that. And I took that love for it and learning about people like Walter Camp and Amos Alonzo Stagg and John Heisman from a rules aspect and converted that into the loving the history of the game and the players and the teams and hearing the stories, and started writing articles for myself and created Pigskin Dispatch, from a coworker who wanted to experiment with some things he was doing on an IT side, and I did that, and it just blew up and loved it so much, and got involved in the Sports History Network, podcasting, YouTubing, and now writing a book. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up to you, because my first book that came out in November or October of 2023, the world's greatest pro gridiron team, the 1903 Franklin All-Stars, has done so well, and I'm so happy that people have enjoyed the story. It's far exceeded what I expected it to do with the interest that people have had. And it's sort of culminated in the community of Franklin, Pennsylvania, where the team played 120 some years ago, has gone and they're celebrating this team that they're recognizing 120 years later. And my book was a part of that, along with the book by Greg Faseri that came out a couple years ago too, in Gridiron Legacy. And Greg and I have been honored to join a panel on October 2nd in Franklin at the Elks Club in Franklin, October 2nd, 2024. We are on a panel of celebrating sort of Western Pennsylvania history. I mean, this is a tremendous panel. John Kolb, the left tackle of the Steelers, is going to be on this panel. Greg and I are going to be sitting next to this legend. We're going to have the authors of Dick LeBeau's book. We had Dick LeBeau on in July talking about his book, Legendary. Well, Scott Brown and George Van Benko were his co-writers, and they are going to be present. I don't believe Coach LeBeau will be there, but his co-authors were. We're also going to have some Pittsburgh sports personalities, the radio hosts, Joe Starkey, Paul Alexander, and Paul Zeiss are going to be joining us there. We also have some local healers, Bay Lawrence, who is a Franklin Oil City native. He is going to be there. Bill Priaco, who was this gentleman is in his 90s, I believe, and just has so many stories and his connections of player personnel and some other things. I can't wait to hear what he's got to say and the stories that he's going to tell to sing. It's going to be tremendous. But the cost that you pay for the ticket, which is $75 a person, $125 a couple, and you can you're going to get a dinner out of this. You're going to get 3 hours of celebrating football history and hearing about what all these people on the panel are going to be talking to you about. And there's some other folks on the panel as well. And you're also going to see videos of some famous people talking about football and the heritage in Venango County in Western Pennsylvania of football history. And you're going to get a copy of my book, my Franklin 1903 book, Greg's Gridiron Legacy book. And there's going to be memorabilia giveaways there too. Some of these athletes, like John Kolb, is going to have some things to sign, and he's going to meet with you and talk and sign autographs and do all kinds of things. You're going to meet a 4-time Super Bowl champion, which is really pretty cool. And I'm hearing him talk last year. He is an amazing storyteller and has so many things to share with you about the game of football that will entertain you. And he's hilarious. So again, this is October 2nd in Franklin, Pennsylvania at the Elks Club, and you can buy tickets ahead of time. They're available at the Franklin Chamber of Commerce, Venango Chamber of Commerce, and the Franklin Elks Club. You can buy them at the door. It's at 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. October 2nd, 2024 in Franklin, Pennsylvania. And if you're there, stop in, tell me that you listened to the podcast or saw this on YouTube, and I'll gladly, I'm there to sign copies of these books. You're going to get a copy of my book, and I'll gladly sign it and personalize it to you. We'll talk a little football as time allows, and we'll have a great evening of enjoying football history. So that's my story. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. Hopefully didn't put everybody to sleep out there, but we'd love to have you join us. And my next book is going to be coming out here real soon on the 1922 Rose Bowl with a matchup of a couple Pennsylvania connected teams. The Washington and Jefferson Presidents, coached by the legendary Greasy Neal, played the Cal Wonder teams of Andy Smith. Andy Smith being a native of DuBois, Pennsylvania, and played for Penn State and the Penn Quakers in the early 20th century. So that's going to be a great book, and that's going to be a lot to talk about here in the coming months. And we've got a lot of other things cooking on here for 2024 and moving on to 2025, and a lot happening during the season. So enjoy our YouTube videos every day. We've got some shorts coming out every day, or some long form like this one is, and podcasts 2 to 3 times a week. And we're writing on pigskindispatch.com for you every day to celebrate and preserve that football history. Till next time, everybody, have a great gridiron day. That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.